We have Mr. Smith and myself, Bernard Parks, as chair. Mr. Koretz is on his way. Mr. Rosendahl is at the Board of Referred Powers, which I have to return to. So I wanted to go through the agenda that we can take care of consent items. And when I leave, I'm asked Mr. Smith if he'd pick up the agenda, and we hold the closed items to last so we can get through some of these items. On the consent items, if we can move items 5, 7, 9, 8, 9, and 15.
I'm sorry, 8 and 9?
5, 7, 8, 9, and 15.
Yeah. Mr. President, we want to move items 5, 7, 8, 9, and 15 on consent, if there's no issues.
Okay.
Okay. And so we'll move those. We have a quorum. Mr. Koretz has joined us. We just asked on item 5, that is part of the committee report, that we asked the clerk to get with the city attorney and to get a status on the budget direction for this year, that asked the city attorney to update outstanding litigation to this committee, and also that the city attorney, if we could ask them for a preliminary report for this fiscal year on assessing the amount of funds that we have available for litigation, and basically, do we expect any surplus or shortfall in 10-11? So we can ask those two instructions for number 5. Number 7, we'd ask for the clerk to request from the controller for the committee report some workload figures to give some appraisal of the fraud reporting and management system since its inception, so that we can be aware of what we've been getting for those funds over the last couple of years. And then for number 9, just one amendment to the motion, that instead of the motion dated January 1st, 2008, we'd ask them to give us a 5-year assessment starting January 1st, 2005, as opposed to 2008. So those, we'd move with those directions and considerations. And so, colleagues, if we can, I think on this item number 6, I think that's the primary item. If we can ask the CAO to come up on that item to give us an update on Schedule H.
I'll come up.
And if you can just kind of run us through, it's I think about 12 pages, if you can just run us through page by page, and if any of the committee has any questions, we're going to deal with it by page.
Okay. Karen Colfine with the CLA's office. This is the monthly update on Exhibit H items. I think before you have a listing of all the Exhibit H instructions, so I'll run through those. On the first page, under Animal Services, it's the last item on the page. That one, the ordinance has been submitted. I'll just go through the ones that either haven't been completed or there have been some change since the last time. So on that item, the ordinance has been submitted, and it is, the ordinance is to be submitted. So that one is not pending before the Public Safety Committee yet.
Which one is the third?
Last one on the
page
first
1?
page, right.
Okay, all right. So it has been submitted?
No, I'm sorry, it has not been yet. So that'll be, once that's submitted, it'll be probably most likely referred to Public Safety to be considered.
Get the city attorney to tell us the approximate status?
Pete Echeverria normally is here, and he may be at the Board of Referred Powers meeting, so.
On our next update, if you can get us that status.
Right. On the second page, the second to the last item, which has to do with the Animal Services Department fees, there was an ordinance submitted, and that was considered in public safety this morning and approved in committee there. On page 3, the first item there is just the instruction to the city attorney to transmit implementing ordinances. I won't update that every month from now on, since that's just a running instruction. The one below that, regarding the status of pending lawsuits, you just gave that instruction on one of the other items, and that could be something you can schedule in this committee for a closed session. The third one down, regarding future liability payouts. These are the top 10 departments.
We can hear you.
The top 10 departments and the CAO and city attorney, working with them to try to reduce liability payments. I don't know if there's anything to add. We'll just jump
Are
in.
you on page 3?
That's on page 3. Then also on page 3, the fifth item down, it's the column that says 74W. That was the administrative citation program. An ordinance was submitted.
Page 3 only has 3.
Oh,
Page 2. Page 2, right?
well, I was on page 3, but it could have something to do with the way it printed out. Okay, well, I'll give the description.
Page 3. I'm with my new document. I'm on page 3.
Okay. The administrative code enforcement program, that ordinance was submitted and heard in committee, and you'd ask the CAO and CLA to go back and take a look at it and kind of flesh it out. So that report from our departments will be forthcoming.
And we articulated some of the concerns about the control of the fund and how that basically that administrative process is going to work.
Right.
Because it's going to be multiple departments that's going to work on that.
Right, and we'll look at all of that and kind of give a report that explains how it's going to work, and if there are any recommendations, we'll make those as well. The last item on page 3 under controller, that is an instruction to have an ordinance to amend the administrative fees charged to labor unions. That may be a meet and confer item, so the city attorney is going to check on that and let us know. On page 4, the first item under convention center is an instruction to address outstanding issues regarding convention center signage. That planning department had submitted a report quite a while ago, and it's pending in the Plum Committee. So that's something we'll still need to get some further updates on. Skipping down to finance, there are 3 items there. The first 3 items on page 4. The first one has to do with the non-tax amnesty program. Touching base with finance, they said they're working with city departments and collection agencies on the program specifics, turning on that. And the last item on that page having to do with the voluntary disclosure program. Also, finance is working on that, and they're preparing a report that'll be submitted perhaps in the next 30 days or so. On page 5, the last item under finance, which is like the third box on that top, says to instruct them to seek full cost recovery from the Department of Water and Power on increasing its reimbursement rate. For finance, they've submitted invoices to DWP with the new reimbursement rate, and they'll be following up with DWP on that. Under fire department, the first item there has to do with implementing an EMS voluntary fee. Fire is working with a consultant on that, as well as with the treatment no transport fee, which is on the next page. So they'll be reporting on that, and then once fire is reported and propose some sort of a program, there'll be an ordinance required for the first one. And on the treatment no transport fee, same with that. So reports will be forthcoming from fire.
Both of those, we have put money in the budget expecting revenue this fiscal year.
There are line items in the budget for both of those. The funding isn't there, but what was anticipated is potentially $7.5 million from one and $3.5 million from the other.
Okay, I mean, but is that, if we put that in the budget and are expecting it as part of our revenue?
And I don't believe it was counted as revenue for this year.
Not revenue, okay.
So if it comes in, then,
Yeah. You know, it's only partial year funding anyway, if it happened.
okay. Continuing on page 6, under General Services Department, the first item is to look at the feasibility of transferring the Office of Public Safety from GSD to the Police Department. That study still needs to be done. The second item is it has to do with transferring funds from between different accounts, and that's going to be done during the course of the year. That first one will be done, I think, in the first FSR. And then the second one having to do with motion picture coordination, that's another one that's ongoing. So that's just done during the course of the year. There really isn't anything more required from either of those. Under Neighborhood Empowerment, this is the ordinance to consolidate the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment and Community Development Department. And as you're aware, the council took an action to continue to look at this, so those ordinances were not adopted, and a report will be forthcoming. On page 7, under Personnel, these are two report backs on, one having to do with the workers' compensation program, and another having to do with looking at the Human Resources Administration program citywide. So those will be studies that need to be done and forwarded at some point. Under Police, the first two were ordinances, one having to do with alarm fees and the other having to do with police permits and other fees. Those were also heard in Public Safety this morning and approved in Public Safety. The third item under Police is to establish a citywide valet permit program. There would be an ordinance required there, and my understanding is that the city attorney is working on that. The last item on that page under Police also has to do with the vehicle release fee, and that was approved by the council earlier, actually last week, so that's pending mayor approval. Page 8, under Public Works Contract Administration, the two items there require report backs, one having to do with changes to the Equal Benefits Ordinance and the other to Affirmative Action Program. So those we'll follow up with Contract Administration to see if those reports are forthcoming. Public Works Engineering, the first item has to do with fees, and we're also following up with engineering to see if they've provided the amounts of those fees so that the ordinance can be prepared. And then the next one under Board of Public Works, similar type of thing. We're following up with Board of Public Works to see if those fees are in process. And the last item is the transfer of the land records program from the city clerk to the Bureau of Engineering, and the city attorney has prepared that ordinance, and it's in final review in the city attorney's office, so that'll be transmitted very soon. Under Sanitation, this is the Solid Resources Lifeline Rate Program that the council took action on back in February. The ordinance was transmitted early in August, and I believe now is pending in Energy and Environment. And here's Pete. Come on, page 9. And then the second one under Sanitation is the ordinance to allow the environmentally preferred purchasing program to be transferred to the Bureau of Sanitation, and that requires an ordinance to allow sanitation to do things that are currently required by the Department of General Services. So the city attorney is working on that. Under street lighting, this item is to allow it has to do with the street banner program. Also, we're going to be following up with street lighting to see what's required there, so the city attorney can prepare the ordinance. Under street services, the street tree planting and maintenance fund, that's something think the CAO is working on that one.
Street services.
The street services. There are two items that involve the special parking revenue fund. The last item on that page, and then one on the next page under transportation. That was approved by council last week, so that ordinance is with the mayor for consideration now. Then skipping to page 11. Under treasurer, this is to look at a treasury management fee. So treasurers, CLA, CAO, along with proprietary departments will be looking at that. I'll have a further update on that one. And then under the citywide cross-departmental or other, the first item there is the signage proposal for the convention center. That's also pending in Plum. And then skipping to page 12, first item is to codify the city's adopted financial policies. And some of the policies are being prepared. And once those are done, this would require an ad code, an ordinance to basically put it in the ad code. Third item on that page is to look at the city's debt program, look at potential consolidations. That's a report that still would need to be prepared. Skipping, let's see, the next one has to do with looking at the financial optimization and opportunities for the city's parking assets. The RFP and draft concession agreement for the parking proposal was approved by the council on August 18, so that's in process. The next two items are just our instructions regarding grant reimbursements and the deposit of settlements and liability claims. Third, this is the next one down with item number 82 next to it. It says instruct all departments to report on position vacancies and a plan to fill these vacancies. This is related to the current year budget and probably can be taken up either with the financial status reports or in a separate presentation sometime before the Budget and Finance Committee if you'd like. The next one is to look at interfund borrowing. The trans were already completed for this year, so this may be something you might want to look at in the future. And the last item on that page is the instruction to the city clerk to open report files for the various reports. Then on page 13, the last item are various items that would be before the EERC. And then, so that completes this list. And then there are a number of other, which I'm not going to go through, a number of other reports, probably in the hundreds, that were asked of departments to report back. So those are in various stages of completion or non-completion, and those would be referred to the appropriate committees as they come in.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, the Pete Echeverria from the City Attorney's Office, there are two ordinances that, and I know those are of the greatest concern to you, that are fee-type ordinances. We're one in particular with Public Works, and there's one other that we're waiting for input from the department as to those fees in order to prepare the ordinance. And those, as soon as that's available, we will prepare it and forward it to you. The third one that is of the three priorities, unless you have other priorities for us, is the valet parking ordinance, which was requested. That's turned out to be somewhat more complex because not much thought had been given about the use of the public right-of-way for the necessary permitting for that purpose. And so we're having to coordinate among various departments, including not just LAPD, but street services and DOT. That's occurring, and unfortunately, August was a slow month for us in terms of getting meetings set up and arranged, but we're getting on top of that. We'll get that to you.
You know, I would just ask that for the CAO and CLA on items that are in different committees, if you could get with the chairs of those committees and see about getting those things scheduled. And for the city attorney, if we can ask to keep the emphasis on those revenue-generating ordinances that we get moving on. Yes. Those. And so those are the two things that we asked before we have this report back on committee. Everything great? Let me ask one other thing for our schedule. We've kind of lost track of our operational plans, and one of the things I'd like to do is that after we get our October report on dealing with our revenues and things of that nature, we need to come back immediately with where are we on operational plans, so we're aware of what departments are doing under their current budgets, and that's something we promised the council way back during the budget process, so we need to find out what's the appropriate time to schedule that so that we can get departments in to talk about this year's budget and its impact, and then by then, the first quarter will tell us whether revenues are going to cause additional issues in the budget. And so it should be somewhere in November, after we get the first quarter of revenue figures. So if we can plan for that, to look at how we're going to address the operational plans by department. And then the final thing I have, and this is just for the CAO, we've had a number of contacts with departments, and the dilemma that they bring up is that although we've discussed issues that deal with managed hiring, they appear that some of them are being held up on managed hiring even though they're in special funds. And we just need to see if ensure that there's some clarity as to if it's special funds, if it's dealing with those that are off the general fund, what is that slowdown in helping them? And I realize we don't want to refill ERIP positions, but those that are non-ERIP positions, how we can help facilitate those departments that are not on the general fund. If we could look at that and let us know.
You want to go ahead?
Well, we certainly will. Just a couple things. I want to go back to your comment about the operational plans. And we are in the process of gathering the information from the departments, putting together the first FSR, and we'll sort of present a variety of issues, certainly from everything from last year's close, where the reserve fund is, what the revenue from last year, what the revenue looks like the first couple of months of this year, looking at perhaps managing this year's budget in relationship to the P3 revenue, look at the different options that we have, and we'll be presenting various alternatives and recommendations to you, and sort of looking at how we're going to manage this year, and then how that actually then rolls into the following year.
When can we expect the first FSR?
We're shooting at the end of this month to have that out, and we will tie your motion that was just approved went out last week, and so we're going to incorporate many of those comments into the first FSR and start laying out a framework both for this year and then as we move into the next year, because we know we're going to have problems and issues to deal with next year.
And I think it's going to be important for us for the FSR because, as we said it over and over, that some of these cuts have eliminated services, and then as people become aware that the services are gone, we get motions that ask you to go get money to return them. And I think the reality is there's no money to go and to return them, so I think we have to come up with what those operational plans and ensure there's some assessment as to whether the general managers picked the right cut as opposed to leaving something that may not be as critical in place, but yet cut something that was very critical. So that's why I think those operational plans are important.
Understand.
And then just,
I'm sorry. So, and on the managed hiring concern, the committee is certainly looking at requests from all departments, both general fund and special fund, and trying to, knowing that we have concerns this year and as we go into the following year, and even in the out years, not just in 11-12, but beyond, the concerns in the general fund, but also we have concerns in many of the special funds as well. We know some of the large special funds that have been okay for several years are not in as good as fiscal health as they have been. And I think as we look at across the spectrum where the requests are and approvals, we want to make sure that we don't create burdens in some of those special funds in the out years.
We understand what you're doing. We just need to have a somewhat of a consistent response to the departments because they have been functioning under one set of criteria that we set to them during budget, general funds versus special funds. So if we're altering that or changing it, we need to be supportive of it or understand what those changes are. Any other questions on this item? we'll move that item, and that will be back in 30 days for an update. And then, next item. Number 10.
Next item is item 10, which was continued from August 2nd, and it follows a joint report from Los Angeles World Airport, Los Angeles Department of Water, Power, and the Harbor Department in response to motion Rosendahl Parks relative to the feasibility of the city's pooling its purchasing power for insurance premiums relative to all general fund and all proprietary departments.
Let me see, may be able to save a little time. One of the things I was wondering about on this item, we're dealing with the 2007 study. From the CAO's perspective, is 2006. Is their expectation of having new information that this motion is going to find or create, or are we pretty well limited? Because I can see from the responses from the proprietaries on the 2006 information, not only is it dated, but they don't agree with much of it. And so I'm trying to find out is there more information or new information that this motion is going to bring to us?
Well, I invite our risk manager to come up. I think, though, yes, the information is from 2006, and I think from our perspective, I think it's still an opportunity to look at. We would perhaps propose updating, the numbers, trying to perhaps do another study to find out whether or not there are still some benefits. I think we still see some value there. And so from our perspective, we don't want to quite give this up. I know each of the departments have unique needs and so forth, but we still believe there's some opportunity we'd like to explore.
So when you do that additional review, you'll take into account their reports that they recently submitted?
Of course.
Okay. Do you have any questions? No. Any questions, Paul? Let's save you some time. Your reports have been submitted. We're going to ask the CAO to come back with some updated information since 2006, and then once we get all of that, we'll ask you to come back, particularly if there are issues that you find inconsistent.
I'm sorry, sir. Can I Victor Parker, the CAO's office, just want to clarify, do you want us to basically update that study? Is that what you're saying?
We need new information.
Okay.
But we'd like not to start off any of the discussions with proprietaries that is dated information and time has passed. So we do need updated information, and we need you to take into account their concerns as they've reported them.
Okay. Yes.
Councilman Parks, if I can just make a suggestion, rather than just redoing that study, maybe we look at some different options, because in going through this analysis, I think we saw maybe some other opportunities with not a bigger pool, but maybe looking at similar assets. And I'll just throw out one example, because we have a maritime policy and we insure all the fire boats and all of the Harbor Department's boats. Now, I don't really know if, say, Rec and Parks has a boat, but, if there might be an opportunity to maybe look at, take similar assets and look at using who's got good, say, deals in different areas rather than one large pool, because I think some of the issues may still be the same.
The thing is, I'm not asking them to redo 2006. We're asking them for new information.
Okay.
Because if it's just 2006, we can receive and file it today. The issue is what's new and what's credible that can be brought to the discussion. That's what we're asking. If departments have those kind of suggestions, we'd like you to share them with the CAO, because, again, we want to make sure they take into account your comments, but it doesn't help us if the first comment is it's dated and we've moved past that. So that's what we need, is new. And if there is no new information, or your suggestion finds that one rowboated MacArthur Park doesn't fit, then we have to look somewhere else.
I was just wondering, as I look at the other departments, if the equations, the numbers change, is it going to change your point of view? And it probably won't, because you're looking at structural issues rather than just dollar and calculation issues. So I'm just wondering if we even need to do that work, if we're going to come to the same conclusion 6 months from now, and that is structurally and from an operational point of view, all the departments are still going to say no, it doesn't work for us.
That's why I suggested looking at some different strategies, not just the one big pool, but there may be some other things that can be looked at.
I'd just like to shed some light on that. That's exactly what the consultant did. I mean, all the departments here cooperated on that study, and certainly you can say it was done in 2007, so it's dated. But that's exactly what the study was about, trying to find opportunities. And the opportunities that study found was in the property, specifically property insurance. That would be an opportunity to group purchase that type of insurance. So I think the question is a fair question. I actually do. Is if we go through all this work and we come back and the proprietary departments are still not interested in doing this, you know, I mean, they have a laundry list of issues. We can address those, and and a lot of those were already addressed in the study and looked at that. So I don't know if anything's going to change.
Let
You know,
me say from my perspective, whether they want to or not, I think what's important is that they're legally restricted. That's what the key issue for me is that if they're legally restricted, that's different than they just don't want to. And I think if we keep running against the legal restrictions, then yes, we'll be right where we are. But if there are issues, we can get around the legal restrictions or come up with proposals that they have a comfort level of not violating the law, which is important, that we can then discuss those. But I think the legal restrictions, they all have brought up legal restrictions, which I think are significant. And so that's what I want to make sure that, so we take it out of the context and just don't want to do it. It's whether they're allowed by law to do it with the revenue that they're dealing with.
Yeah, we all want to save money on insurance premiums, and if you look at the data, the graph in there on page 6, I mean, see what happened to LAWA in terms of how there's been savings in insurance premiums, and so, you know, I think it's something we all have a desire to do, and there's been a lot of work done already to kind of get us there. So.
And the thing is, we as the CA to get with the parties, if we find we've run into a roadblock, and legally we can't do it, we don't want to generate another report that says we can't do it.
Good point.
Okay.
Fair enough, yes.
You guys get together.
Yeah, Councilmember Parks, thank you for your comments. And what we're passing out right now is we calculated the savings we've achieved since this 2006 study, and it's come to about $20 million just for the airport alone. So a substantial amount of money. That's taking advantage of the worldwide underwriting market, the drop in insurance premiums, which Victor and his team are still achieving and will next year. But, you know, there is opportunity, like you pointed out. There's opportunity for pooling like risks, the maritime risks that Dr. Nance has down at the port. We have maybe an opportunity to pull in the convention center into our property program. DWP can pull in the wastewater treatment facilities into their program. Very similar like risks. In my program, I can provide much higher premiums or much higher limits of insurance, lower premiums, and, you know, we're all in this together, so we're definitely looking for ways to...
That's what we need your ideas in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, again, we're not looking for the same old report. We're looking to see what you can come up with between the collective views, again, legally. So if we can get that resolved, we ask the CAO to coordinate those kinds of meetings and bring back that information. Okay.
You want to just continue?
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, is this continued?
Would like to just continue the item?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, items 11 and actually,
Let's hold that because I'm going to have to run back downstairs. If we can go to 13, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Smith.
You want to continue 11? Oh, he's going to
No,
do
I said
11.
they'll handle it, but I'd like to deal with 13 before I go.
13, okay. Item 13 was continued from October 5th, 2009, Parks Gardens motion relative to request that the city attorney prepare an ordinance requiring that for gifts requiring council approval, the CAO review the proposed donation and make a recommendation to the council regarding its acceptance. Yeah, we're, oh no, he's still there.
Pete, we need you. Number 13. Just like to get a status because this thing has been hanging around since 2007. as to where we are on the ordinance and the issues that may complicate.
Right, and my apologies, that there's just been too many things on my plate.
I'm going to get you a bigger plate.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe a cup and saucer, or a bowl.
I'm going to have you plastic utensils.
Or a bowl. I simply need to get together a meeting of our ethics expert and the ethics commission, as well as CLA and CAO, to get you the recommendations. This ordinance, because of the new regulations that were passed by the FPPC now approximately 10 months ago, will look somewhat different from what the motion requested. I want to get a scope of that back to you, and I'll try and get that meeting done within the next week to 10 days.
So if we
so that
hold
can
this
get
for
back to
30 days, you'll have something for us?
I'll have a report back to you at that time.
And we would love to take up the option to sort of sit down and discuss some of the items in this. I think we have some concerns regarding the amounts and some of the donation limits and some of the
Because we put together, you can include the CAO into that meeting.
Every aspect of it will come back to
Just
you.
hold this for 30 days.
Okay,
And
with
guys-
your office too.
And if Pete doesn't call you, let me know.
I'll make sure
I have his cell phone number.
I'll make sure we include both CAO and CLA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I dealt with
This 11 to last.
it. Your 11, 12 can go together.
Okay.
And then the only thing left is your motion on the airport.
You done with Pete?
And I'll make sure we include Monique as well. Just
Thank you.
give her something to do.
I think that's all.
Okay. Item 14.
14, okay. Item 14 is CO report relative to the feasibility, benefits, and detriment of returning control of the LA-Ontario International Airport to the City of Ontario. This was also referred to the Trade, Commerce, and Terms Committee. We have Andrea and Mike to give us a status report.
Andrea Mills, CAO office. At this particular time, if and until the City of Ontario presents a formal request, we would anticipate that the mayor or the council would request the CAO office to evaluate it at that time, should a request be presented to LAWA and the Board of Airport Commissioners.
So they haven't presented anything yet?
No, sir.
Okay, could I?
Mike Molina, Deputy Director,
Yeah.
External Affairs at LAWA.
Okay. So I was under the understanding that they had presented something, or there was discussion about something, and...
Discussion is underway.
Okay.
There have been a series of meetings over the summer, both with the Mayor's Office as well as with the CAO and Southern California Association of Governments. But to date, no proposal has been submitted.
Okay, so we're going to wait until we hear from them.
That's right.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That takes us then to the closed items.
We have actually 11.
Mr. Parks wanted to hold those
Oh, to the end?
to the end in case he can get back.
Okay. On item 14, did you want to continue it here in committee or have it
Yeah, let's
referred to
just
trade?
hold it off calendar for now until we hear something from, and I'll probably see the Ontario folks in San Diego tomorrow or the next day, whatever.
Okay. All right, then that would take us to closed session
Closed
then.
session items. So pursuant to Government Code section, we are meeting in executive session on lawsuits.
We're still on the agenda. I believe we have a motion to continue those for 1 week.
They'll be continued for 1
1
week.
week.
Okay?
And
That concludes today's agenda. If anyone wants to speak on item 9 on today's agenda, now is a chance to do so. Seeing none, meeting's adjourned.